Welcome back. Now let's continue with contaminations. So let's get started with biological contaminations. There are four types of pathogens that can contaminate food and cause foodborne illnesses. That's bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi, which does include mold and yeast. But there are over 40 varieties of the biological contaminants. And of those 40, here are the big six. Number one, Shingilla sip. Number two, Salmonella typhi. Number three, non-typhoidal Salmonella NTS. Number four, Shinga toxin producing E. coli. Number five, hepatitis A. Number six, norovirus. Now, some of the types of symptoms that will be experienced when you come in contact with any of these: vomiting, cramps, fever, diarrhea, nausea, jaundice. Here we go. This is another loaded slide with a lot of content. I'm going to take it slow. Major bacteria that cause foodborne illnesses. We discuss the names of some of these bacteria and we'll review them more thoroughly here. So the bacteria names are Salmonella typhi, non-typhoidal Salmonella, Shingilla sip, and Shinga toxin producing E. coli. The sources of where they usually come from. Salmonella typhi usually live in humans and in their fecal matter. The foods linked with this bacteria are usually ready-to-eat foods and beverages. Prevention with proper food handling is to make sure that no one is infected. Wash hands and cook at minimum temperatures. For the next bacteria, the non-typhoidal Salmonella, sources of where it usually comes from are that it comes from many animals. Food linked with this bacteria are usually poultry, eggs, meat, dairy, tomatoes, peppers, and cantaloupes. Prevention with proper food handling is to cook it at minimum temperatures, no cross contamination, and no infected workers. The next one, Shingilla sip, is sourced are usually within contaminated food or water, and they can be from flies. Food linked with bacteria of the Shingilla sip are usually ground beef that is raw or undercooked and contaminated produce, though having undercooked hamburgers and or raw meats within your hamburgers are a phase of popularity of some dishes in dining spaces, is ill-advised, highly ill-advised to eat raw meat. A prevention with proper food handling would be to purchase your food sources from reputable suppliers, no cross contamination, no one infected, and to cook it at minimum temps. The last bacteria here is Shinga toxin producing E. coli. Source of where it usually comes from are within food handlers that are touching contaminated food and then touching ready to eat food, which we discussed in the cross contamination slides in the last chapter. The food linked with this type of bacteria is usually because of touching, scratching wounds, skin, and touching food without washing your hands. Prevention with proper food handling is the obvious: washing hands and also using wiping cloths that are stored in a sanitizer solution between uses. We've also discussed this in the previous slide. This may seem like it's a lot, but here's an easier way to remember the conditions for bacteria. We call this the fat time. Fat time is based off of location, detection, growth, and prevention. So we have the location of where the bacteria is, and bacteria is everywhere. The detection of how to see or catch bacteria. Bacteria cannot be seen, smelled, or tasted. Growth. Bacteria needs 6 conditions to grow. That's the fat time we're about to talk about. And prevention. Keep bacteria controlled with time and temperature. As I mentioned before, pathogens are everywhere. It's just about when they overproduce and they're everywhere and we cannot contain them, nor can we fight them in our bodies because they're just too many. But let's talk about the conditions for their growth. That is where we are sanitizing and cleaning to constantly battle. First, it is the F for fat time. F stands for food. Most bacteria need nutrients to survive. TCS foods, which are ready to eat foods, support this growth because they can be eaten. A is for acidity. Bacteria grows better with little to no acid. T is for time. Bacteria needs time to grow. Another T is for temperature. Bacteria grows rapidly between 41 degrees Fahrenheit and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. This is why we say to throw your foods away after 4 hours. If they have been between these temperatures, this is usually what we consider to be room temperature after a while. So the 4 hours will have your room temperature time expired. So you must throw it out because your bacteria has rapidly grown between the degrees of 41 degrees Fahrenheit and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. The next is O for oxygen. Some bacteria needs oxygen and others do not. So you can not always think that you're killing them because you're depriving it of oxygen. Some bacteria do survive without oxygen, but others do need the oxygen to survive at all. M is for moisture. Bacteria grow well in food with high levels of moisture. It's basically like giving them some juice or some water with a meal because they need to eat and drink. Bacteria is a living organism. It breathes and breathes. Next, we have major viruses that cause foodborne illnesses. These are in two categories: hepatitis A and norovirus. Hepatitis A usually comes from human blood that is transferred to the food or in the contaminated water, also linked to shellfish. So, this is one of the biggest reasons why we go over first aid, in addition to the ServSafe certificate, because we need you to move expeditiously. Once you break skin and you start to bleed, it needs to be removed from the kitchen altogether so that you can receive first aid and or be either transmitted to the hospital for more treatment or have it properly sealed with bandages and first aid ointments. Food linked with this virus are usually ready to eat food because usually food goes straight from the kitchen after being cooked to out for service for people to eat, and the cuts and the blood types of transfer can happen during that time. Shellfish from contaminated waters can also be a carrier as well. Prevention with proper food handling would be to have no one infected, so no one have hepatitis A in their system already. You wash your hands constantly, cook at minimum temperatures, and purchase from approved suppliers with no bare hand contact. It is very easy to cut yourself when working with shellfish, especially if you don't have the experience of handling. Lastly, here was norovirus. Big common norovirus contaminants are the cold. Just recently, coronavirus also fell in the norovirus category. So we want to make sure that we're constantly washing hands to control this type of contaminant. But the source of where it usually comes from is when humans' feces touches ready to eat food. Remember, we went through the slide about how you went to the bathroom at the same time with your coworker and you both flushed toilets. One washed their hands and the one did not. The one who did not was the walking norovirus. Or it could be another contaminant, but ultimately a walking foodborne illness. Foods linked with this virus are ready to eat food and shellfish from contaminated waters. And prevention for it with proper food handling is to cook it at minimum temperatures, no cross contamination, and no infected workers. Wash your hands. Next, we have major parasites that cause foodborne illnesses. Now, parasites require a host to live and reproduce. Some parasites could be the worms. Oh God, I just to even think of them, they're just so disgusting. But they do live. They survive the gut, um, and they thrive in our bodies because we become their hosts. Sources for parasites are commonly associated with seafood, wild game, and food processed with contaminated water, such as produce. Prevention with proper food handling must purchase from approved, reputable suppliers. Cooking food to required minimums internal temperatures is also important. Make sure the fish that will be served raw or undercooked has been correctly frozen by the manufacturer. Fungi. Now, fungi are fun guys. They're in our yeast, our molds, and our mushrooms, and they are not parasites. But some of these do produce toxins, and some harmful mushrooms are hard to detect. Some molds are allowed as its natural processes that is harmless to humans, such as blue cheese. And you must be a very skilled forager to go for mushrooms to know which ones are which. Here are some real life examples of outbreaks of those types of contaminants, such as the E. coli outbreak in 2024 over the Fresh Express sunflower crisp chopped salads, and the other outbreak of penicillin that was in blue cheese in 2020. Now let's talk about major biological toxins that cause foodborne illnesses. Now, the origin of some of these toxins are natural to plants and mushrooms and seafood, but other toxins, such as histamine, are made by pathogens on fish when it's time and temperature abuse. An example of a histamine biological toxin is when someone is having an allergic reaction to seafood, and it's a histamine reaction that their body is producing. The symptoms of this would be experienced within minutes. Usually, you'll start to see people pulling at their ears or scratching really badly towards their skin because they're getting hives or having some type of flushing of their face. Something is starting to manifest very quickly. So, usually within minutes of consumption. Then you also have other symptoms such as diarrhea, vomiting, neurological manifestations, flushed face, difficulty breathing, burning mouth, heat and heart palpitations, and hives. Prevention with proper food handling is that toxins cannot be destroyed by cooking or freezing. Just purchase plants, mushrooms, and seafood from approved, reputable suppliers. Control time and temp. It's just that simple. There are other toxins in larger fish that you'll see here as well that you can investigate. Okay, so we got through a great deal. Are you guys good? Are we all right? All right, let's go. Here's another one. Let's talk about major chemical contaminants. You can look at the duck over there doing all the dishes, and he's so flustered. He's doing it so fast. How thorough do you think he's doing right now? Let's go to the origin of chemical contaminants. Chemicals can contaminate food that is stored incorrectly. Cleaners, sanitizers, polishes, machine lubricants, deodorizers, first aid products, jewelry, cosmetics, hand lotions, hairsprays, and pesticides, all that stuff, etc. All should be stored separately and securely away from your food supplies. Do not cross the two. The symptoms of when these two do cross and there is cross contamination that happens because you now have chemicals near your food, they vary depending on the chemical that was consumed, because ultimately these are things that are not supposed to be digested by the human body. Most occur within minutes. vomiting, and diarrhea are common. Prevention with proper food handling is that the chemicals used must be approved for food service operation. Store chemicals away from the food properly. The chemicals for their intended use and by the manufacturer's directions. Use them the right way. Physical contaminations can also be from metal shavings, fingernails, hair, staples, etc. All the things that should not be in your kitchen. But if they are, they will produce a physical contaminant that will also have its own symptoms, and the prevention is the same. Keep it away from the food. Oh, yeah, Nova. You can't work in food service with the false nails and the lashes and without a hairnet, etc. So I'm recording and not in my kitchen. And no, I don't wear false nails in my kitchen or lashes. And yes, I do wear a hairnet, and if my hair is not in a net, it is pulled back and tucked into my hat. And I do not have hair on my face, but I'm recording, so it's different. So, what to do when you're responding to a foodborne illness outbreak? Easier said than done, but don't panic. First, gather information, check all your logs, talk to all of your staff, even some of your clientele if they're still there. Notify authorities. Segregate the products. If you are starting to talk to people and you're gathering your documents and you're noticing that time and temp was out of whack, or you don't have all the signatures you need, or data's missing and it's around these certain sections and these certain groups of food, you need to quarantine that food and have it taken out of service areas. Document everything, even this process. The process of your investigation, the process of you not panicking, the process of you asking questions and reviewing all your things. Document, document, document. Identifying staff. At this point, you need to know who did what and where are they now. Cooperate with authorities. We're not saying that this is something you would call the cops for, though it may be a part of the process. But we are saying this is something you need to talk to your health department about. You need to call the FDA about. You need to call the CDC about. Contact them appropriately and make sure you record everything. Review your procedures because now you want to know, how did this happen? When did it happen? And how do I prevent this from happening again? Food allergies. We were just talking about the biological contaminants that produce these types of reactions because it is a histamine reaction. Food allergies are not necessarily a histamine, but they are a protein in food or ingredients that some people are sensitive to. These proteins occur naturally. When enough of an allergen is eaten, an allergic reaction can occur. Some allergy symptoms look like nausea, wheezing or shortness of breath, hives or itchy skin, swelling of body parts, including your face, vomiting and or diarrhea, abdominal pains, an itchy throat. The big 8 allergens. Most allergens are found in these common food products. Milk. Some of those allergens look like lactose intolerance. That's not limited to it, but it's one of them. Eggs, fish. Most allergens can be found in fish. Wheat, peanuts. If you've ever worked in schools or around children, you will notice that it usually says nut free. Prior to that, it used to say peanut free. Soy, crustacean shellfish such as crabs, lobster, shrimp, and tree nuts, walnuts, and pecans. We're back to the nut free rule of thumb.